It was a bright spring afternoon when we arrived at the wedding venue. The garden was alive with color, vivid tulips swaying in the breeze, lanterns hanging delicately from the branches of the old oak trees, and sunlight glinting off the fountain in the center. The air smelled of fresh grass mixed with roses, and I could hear the faint hum of conversation and laughter from guests mingling near the reception area. My daughter Emily looked radiant in her gown, her cheeks glowing, her hands slightly trembling as she clutched her bouquet. And behind her, steady and calm, was Sam, my soon-to-be son-in-law, his eyes bright with a kind of quiet determination I had never seen before. I had spent the morning trying to keep myself composed, reminding myself that it was just another wedding, just another celebration. But when Emily walked down the aisle, all poised elegance and barely contained excitement, I felt something twist in my chest. A mixture of joy, nostalgia, and an almost unbearable pride. I could feel the years behind me, the sleepless nights, the laughter, the tears, and suddenly, in that moment, it all felt intensely alive. After the ceremony, the reception was in full swing. People were dancing, glasses clinking, and the string quartet played softly in the background. I found myself lingering near the edge of the crowd, observing, letting the celebration wash over me without fully stepping into it. That's when Sam approached me. He didn't just come over casually. He walked with a purpose, his expression calm but thoughtful. "Can we talk for a moment?" he asked quietly, almost reverently. There was something in his tone that made me nod instinctively. We stepped away from the noise, walking toward a quiet corner near the garden's edge. The sun had begun to dip, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns, and the lanterns flickered with the first hints of evening light. I remember thinking how surreal it was, the world alive and vibrant around us, yet here we were in this suspended, intimate moment. Sam looked at me with eyes I suddenly realized I hadn't truly seen before, not just the polite, respectful eyes of my daughter's Fayanka, but eyes that carried depth, reflection, and an honesty that demanded attention. He paused, took a slow breath, and then spoke in a voice that was almost a whisper, despite the distance from the crowd. "I just want to thank you," he began, and I felt a subtle quiver of curiosity. Not for Emily, not for this wedding, but for raising her, for everything that made her who she is today. I know I'm stepping into someone's life, someone so full of love and light, and I want you to know that I don't take that lightly. I hope you can trust me to care for her the way you have. I blinked, surprised by the weight of his words. There was no arrogance, no showy sentimentality, just honesty and a quiet reverence. I found myself laughing softly, partly from relief, partly from the strange emotion of being acknowledged in a way I hadn't expected. "I do trust you," I said finally, the words feeling heavier than I thought they would. I wouldn't have let her choose otherwise. We stood there in silence for a moment, the wind stirring the leaves above us, the soft music drifting over from the reception. And in that pause, I realized something important. It wasn't just about Emily and Sam, or about a wedding day that felt like it might pass in a blur. It was about this subtle, unexpected connection forming, a recognition that love, respect, and understanding could extend beyond the obvious relationships and reach into spaces you never anticipated. That brief conversation, that quiet acknowledgement, planted a seed in my heart, a seed that would grow into something I didn't even know I needed. Little did I know what he told me in those few minutes would stay with me long after the flowers wilted, the champagne was gone, and the last dance was over. And that was just the beginning. After that quiet moment with Sam, I thought the rest of the evening would settle into the usual blur of congratulations, dancing, and laughter. But somehow his words lingered in my mind like a soft echo I couldn't shake. I found myself watching him from across the room, noticing little things I hadn't before, the way he gently adjusted Emily's train when she stumbled over it, the way he laughed softly at a child who had spilled punch on his suit, the way his eyes seemed to carry both warmth and an unspoken thoughtfulness. Later, when the sun had fully set and the lanterns glowed like little stars scattered across the garden, Sam came over again. This time it was with a small tray of glasses, wine for me, sparkling water for him. He handed me mine with a quiet nod, and I realized I had been holding my glass so tightly I was surprised it hadn't slipped. "I thought you might want a moment away from the crowd," he said, his voice low and careful. There was a gentleness in it, an unhurried sincerity that felt different from the polite small talk I had expected. I nodded and let him lead me to a bench under a canopy of wisteria. The air was cooler here, scented with jasmine and the faint hint of fresh rain on the grass. For a moment, we just sat in silence, listening to the faint hum of the party behind us, the laughter, the clinking of glasses, the occasional burst of music. It felt like a world paused just for us, a rare and delicate space of calm amid celebration. "You know," Sam began, taking a sip of his water, "I've been thinking about tonight, about Emily, and about families." He hesitated for a beat, then added, "I didn't realize how important it would be to have your trust. I've always wanted to be part of a family, not just someone who marries into it. But now that it's happening, I hope I can live up to that." His words caught me off guard. I had never seen anyone speak with that kind of quiet humility, especially not about joining a family. Most people would focus on the celebration, the honeymoon, the excitement. But Sam, he seemed to feel the weight of it all, the responsibility, the love, and the subtle history that came before him. "I can tell you already care for her," I said softly, and I meant it. "It's not about grand gestures. It's in the little things, the way you watch her, the way you notice her. That's what counts." He smiled, a small, almost shy smile that softened the edges of his usually calm demeanor. "I want to be someone she can rely on, and someone you can respect too. Not because I have to, but because I want to." It was in that moment that I realized the evening had shifted for me. The wedding, the celebration, the music, they were beautiful, yes, but it was this connection, this unexpected bridge of understanding between Sam and me, that felt profound. It wasn't romantic, not in the conventional sense. It was something subtler, deeper, an acknowledgement of trust, of shared responsibility, of emotional honesty. We sat there for a while longer, talking quietly about memories of Emily as a child, about our favorite family traditions, about the small, unremarkable things that somehow made life meaningful. I found myself laughing more freely than I had all day, shedding layers of the nervousness and formality that had settled over me. Sam's presence had a calming effect, a quiet reassurance that made it easier to breathe, to feel, and to let go just a little. When we finally stood to return to the party, I felt a strange sense of gratitude. Gratitude not just for Sam or for Emily, but for the moment we had shared, a moment of true understanding that went beyond words, beyond appearances, beyond what anyone else at the wedding could have seen. I didn't yet know how far this connection would take me, or what lessons it might quietly teach, but for the first time that day, I felt as though I had glimpsed something rare, something enduring, something that might stay with me long after the wedding lights faded. And as we walked back toward the laughter and music, I felt an unexpected sense of anticipation, an almost unspoken knowing that this was just the beginning of a journey I hadn't imagined, with a man I had only just begun to understand. The days after the wedding were quieter, slower, but the echo of that evening with Sam stayed with me. Life returned to its usual rhythm, laundry, grocery shopping, and phone calls, but every time I thought of Emily, I found myself thinking of him too. Not in a romantic way, but in a way that stirred something quietly thoughtful inside me. There was an ease to his presence, a depth of understanding I hadn't expected from a man I'd only known through brief encounters and polite conversations. One afternoon, a week after the wedding, Sam called. He wanted to stop by for coffee. I hesitated for a moment. Part of me wondered if this was normal, if it was something a mother-in-law should welcome, but another part of me, the part that had felt that rare, unspoken connection under the lantern-lit garden, said yes. When he arrived, the sunlight streamed through my kitchen windows, highlighting the soft gold of the walls and the faded photographs of Emily as a child. Sam carried a small bouquet of wildflowers, nothing extravagant, just fresh-picked daisies and lavender. He handed them to me with a shy smile, and I found myself feeling that same quiet warmth I had felt at the wedding. "I thought you might like these," he said, and I realized that his words, like his gestures, always carried that subtle attentiveness. "It's silly, but I like bringing a little of the outside in." We settled at the kitchen table with our coffee, the steam curling up and mingling with the morning light. Conversation started casually, books, movies, small updates on Emily, but it soon drifted into something deeper. Sam began to talk about his own family, about lessons he had learned, about mistakes he had made, and how they shaped him. He spoke with honesty, without pretension, and I listened, surprised by how comfortable it felt to share this space with him. "I've been thinking a lot about family lately," he said softly, "about what it really means to belong somewhere, to be trusted. I never realized how much that matters until I met Emily and met you. You've given her so much love, and it makes me want to be better, not just for her, but in general." His words touched me in a way I hadn't anticipated. It was as if he was not just speaking to me, but to the part of myself that had always wondered if the people we love truly see us, if the bonds we form can survive life's chaos. And here he was, acknowledging it so gently, so respectfully, without any expectation beyond shared understanding. We laughed at stories from Emily's childhood, her terrible attempts at cooking, her stubborn insistence on carrying every stray dog home, her endless curiosity, and I felt a tenderness blooming. Not for him in a romantic sense, but for this rare sense of kinship, this quiet revelation that trust and respect could create a bond that transcended conventional boundaries. At some point, the conversation paused, and we simply sat in silence, watching the sunlight shift across the walls. I realized that moments like this, unexpected, intimate, and deeply human, were what life often offered in quiet increments. Not in grand gestures, but in simple, thoughtful presence. Before he left, Sam looked at me with that calm intensity I had come to recognize. "Thank you," he said, "for trusting me, for letting me be part of your family in my own way. It means more than I can put into words." I smiled, feeling a sense of peace and connection I hadn't expected. "You're already part of it," I said softly, "and I think Emily knows it too." As I watched him leave, I realized how much I had grown to respect him, not just as my daughter's husband, but as someone who understood the weight of love, responsibility, and human connection. It was a subtle, unexpected journey, and yet it felt profoundly significant. That day, I discovered that family wasn't just about shared blood or living under one roof. It was about moments like this, honest, quiet, and deeply human. And in those moments, I realized there could be unexpected bonds that shaped you as much as the people you loved. Months had passed since the wedding, but the quiet bond Sam and I had begun to form continued to grow in subtle, meaningful ways. Emily was thriving in her marriage, naturally radiant and full of the same warmth I had always known, and yet I noticed how calmer, steadier she seemed with Sam by her side. It wasn't something that could be measured by words or gestures. It was an energy, a sense of balance, a quiet strength they shared. One autumn afternoon, Sam came over again. The sunlight through the kitchen windows was softer now, golden and drifting across the walls like honey. He had brought his guitar, not for music, not for show, but just to play softly while we sat together. We didn't speak much at first, just shared sips of coffee and listened to the occasional hum of his chords, the notes mingling with the faint rustle of leaves outside. There was a calm, almost meditative rhythm to it. After a while, he set the guitar aside and looked at me with the same honesty I had come to expect. "I've been thinking," He said, about family and about how fleeting moments are. One day, everything feels ordinary, and the next, you realize a simple conversation or a quiet afternoon like this has stayed with you forever. I nodded, feeling a lump in my throat I didn't try to hide. I know exactly what you mean, I said. It's funny how the little things, moments that feel ordinary, can end up being the most important. He smiled, but it wasn't just a polite smile. It was one that reached his eyes, steady and unassuming. That's why I wanted to thank you again. Not just for trusting me, but for letting me be myself with you. Most people don't realize how rare that is. And in that moment, I realized he was right. Rare, uncommon, beautiful in its subtlety. He wasn't just my daughter's husband. He was someone who had quietly, patiently built a bridge between us, a bridge of trust, understanding, and mutual respect. And that bridge had taught me something about myself, about letting go of expectations, about opening up to people, and about finding emotional richness in unexpected places. We spent the afternoon reminiscing, sharing quiet laughter, and talking about life in ways that didn't feel forced or superficial. Sam had a way of listening that made you feel entirely seen, entirely understood, without judgment or pretense. I realized that, in many ways, these moments were teaching me as much about being human as they were about being a mother-in-law. When he finally stood to leave, I felt a pang of gratitude that I couldn't quite put into words. Thank you, Sam, I said quietly, for everything. For Emily, for me, for this connection. He reached out and gave my hand a gentle squeeze. And thank you for letting me in. It means more than I can say. As I watched him walk down the path, fading into the soft golden light of late afternoon, I felt a sense of closure, of calm, and of quiet growth. The wedding had been beautiful, yes, but the unexpected, intimate moments afterward, the ones that couldn't be planned or performed, were the ones I would carry with me forever. I realized then that life's most meaningful experiences aren't always the grand gestures. They're the quiet conversations, the moments of trust, the gestures of understanding, and the times when someone sees you, not just who you are, but what you've carried all along, and responds with kindness and respect. And that was what Sam had given me, a reminder that even in the ordinary rhythms of life, extraordinary connections can happen, shaping your heart and leaving a lasting imprint. A connection I would always remember.